YouTube.
You open this door with the key of reason. Beyond it is another dimension. A dimension of truth. A dimension of freedom. A dimension of joy. You're moving into the land of both the ideal and the real, of the possible and the actual. You've just crossed over into the Capitalist Corner.
Where reason meets reality, welcome to the Capitalist Corner.
Welcome to the Capitalist Corner, the special episode. I'm Michael Liebowitz. I'm here to debate a very young man who goes by the name of Liquid Zulu. We're going to be debating whether it's better to view objectivism as an open system or a closed system. I think you're going to enjoy the discussion. He and I have debated in the past, and it's always fruitful. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Mr. Zulu.
Yes, thank you very much for having me on. So basically, this sort of sorry, just trying to mess with my audio interface there, because I couldn't hear myself. This sort of discussion, it kind of kicked off on Twitter, where I was, or X, formerly known as Twitter, as Grok likes to tell me. This is basically we're getting at it. I was saying that. No, indeed, objectivism is an open system that you can have an objectivism, you can be an objectivist and be an anarchist at the same time. That's specifically my thought. Obviously, you pointed out that David Kelly disagrees with me, but I don't really give much of a damn what David Kelly thinks on matter.
Oh, come on. I didn't just say, hey, David Kelly disagrees.
I'm not trying to say that. I'm not trying to say that.
You said that the people that say you can't be an objectivist are predominantly closed objectivists. That's why I said, no, actually, David Kelly disagreed.
Predominantly, yeah. For sure. We can at least accept predominantly.
Yeah, only because the open objectivists aren't really out there. They're not there too much.
Okay,
Except for in your group.
I'll drop that then. But I do have this one point that I want to sort of open this up on, which I don't think we really got down to it fully when we were getting at this initially, which is, do you think that every Aristotelian, because obviously we know what an Aristotelian is, would every Aristotelian believe that, what Aristotle said, that the stars are like embedded in all these spheres which are rotating? They're trying to emulate the sphere above them until eventually they get to some unmoved mover, which is thought thinking about itself. Because that's what Aristotle believed. But does every Aristotelian believe that?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were making your opening statement. I didn't know you were going to ask me a question. No, every person that's called an Aristotelian doesn't believe that. The question is, so what? What difference does it make? The question is, should Aristotelianism have been, what's the word I'm looking for, expanded to include folks who don't agree with Aristotle? That's what the heart of the matter is. The fact that it's happened, there's been plenty of ideas that have been diluted over the years. Marxism, capitalism, conservatism, liberalism, all get watered down and diluted. The question that we're trying to address is whether that's a good thing or not. So the fact that it has happened means nothing. If you're going to argue that it's right that it happened, then you have to make that point.
I don't really see this as a dilution, though. I see this as actually pointing at the essentials, which Aristotle was forwarding. Obviously, we don't know everything Aristotle said. A lot of it was lost. But you can kind of get a general sense of his system, which was, looking out. It was mostly what Ayn Rand ended up refining further, right? It was a complete rejection of the Platonism, even though, we do have writings from Aristotle where he adopts some amount of Platonism. We can identify these elements as diversions from the more fundamental theory that he was adopting. But that we can do that implies that we could do that for other philosophers as well. Like, we can do it for at least Aristotle. And I'm just saying, well, we can also do that for Ayn Rand. I don't think that we have to define objectivism in this completely idiosyncratic manner, where it's just whatever beliefs Ayn Rand happened to hold in philosophy.
Okay. Does who you include in Aristotelianism change what Aristotle's philosophy was?
Well, I mean, if you include I don't really define philosophies in terms of who I include in
No,
the
no,
philosophy.
no, no, no. What I
Yeah.
want to know is, did Aristotle have a specific philosophy?
Yes.
Okay. Did Plato have a specific philosophy?
Yes.
Okay, so these people had specific philosophies. Now, you made a very good point just now. You said that Aristotle included some Plato, but then went on his own, but we still identify the Platonism in it. Why not then just call yourself, and you said Rand did the same with Aristotelianism, so why not just call yourself an Aristotelian? Why even use objectivism? Why the change?
Well, no, but the fact that the fact that I can say, hey, this is an Aristotelian viewpoint, that very fact implies that, well, Aristotelian doesn't just mean the enumeration of every belief that Aristotle held in philosophy, because there are certain viewpoints which Aristotle the man held, which are not actually Aristotelian. They're Platonist.
Okay, but the point is there are things that Aristotle did originate. Now, if you tell me this is the philosophy of Aristotle, I know then specifically what I have to do. I can go look to the prior analytics, posterior analytics. I can read on the soul. I can read poetics. I can read, I think it's called On Rhetoric. There's various things that I can read by Aristotle to see exactly what his views are. If you just say Joe Smith is an Aristotelian, because the concept has been so watered down, I don't know what the specific views are of Joe Smith any longer. Similarly, you could use Marxism. If you say Marxist, right, you don't know what that even means because it doesn't just any longer mean the views just of Marx. So Marx, I don't know if it's apocryphal or true, but it said evidently, I'm not a Marxist. Same thing with Keynes. John Maynard Keynes puts forward an economic system that gets watered down. Different people get called Keynesians. And then Keynes says, I'm not a Keynesian. So if you say John X is a Keynesian, I don't necessarily know what you're talking about. If you tell me the economic views of John Maynard Keynes, I know what they mean. So, and you also have the problem, Zulu, that Aristotle, Plato, Keynes, Marx didn't specifically name their system. Ayn Rand developed and discovered a system and put a name on it to identify exactly what she was talking about. Now, if we limit objectivism, or the philosophy of Ayn Rand, to Rand's views, then you can critique it, you can add on to it. But when you add on to it, that's Zulu's idea, Zulu's creation, same as me, says anyone else. But if I want to critique objectivism, I critique Ayn Rand. If I want to give credit, I give credit to Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand specifically developed a philosophy, called it objectivism. It doesn't mean that Ayn Rand, one, said everything that needs to be said in philosophy. It doesn't mean that Ayn Rand was always correct. It just means that Ayn Rand's philosophy is Ayn Rand's philosophy. Those are her views. Now, I don't even understand, like, if I come up with a new idea, I want credit for it. I don't want her getting credit for it. So why would I even want to consider it a part of objectivism? Why not just say I'm influenced by objectivism and I'm attempting to integrate my own views with it?
Well, I'm not, to be clear, I'm not attributing any of my contributions, my correct contributions, which Ayn Rand failed to make. I'm not attributing any of those to Ayn Rand, but I am attributing them under the objectivist banner, because that's just how it's done everywhere else. If we talk about, evolution, the theory of evolution, right? Innovations can be made in the theory of evolution. Who came up with the theory of evolution? Well, it's Charles Darwin, and he coined the term, right? He named the theory of evolution specifically.
I don't even know if that's true, though, Zulu. And furthermore, Lamarck also had a theory of evolution. Darwin's theory is specifically Darwin's theory of evolution by natural selection. And Darwin's theory is Darwin's theory. If somebody else adds on to it, again, they may call themselves Darwinians, or, which would be more appropriate, neo-Darwinians, because then that adds the differentiator from the original. But either way, the fact that people do it doesn't make it correct. You'd be the first one to call out people who have improper integrations, improper definitions. People do it all the time. So the fact that that's popularly done doesn't make it correct.
So you said there again that there can be improper integrations, improper, expansions onto some core theory, right? Some core thesis. And that is the sense in which I don't think this is watering down Aristotle's thesis to call Aristotelianism, basically the sort of proto in the baby form of what eventually Ayn Rand would pick up, right? You can see that there's some central thesis there, which Aristotle deviated from, and then Aquinas deviated from, and which only Ayn Rand reined back in and went, okay, actually there are some problems with this core thesis, and actually this core thesis, there's something more fundamental to it, which is, in my view, the primacy of existence, right? Aristotle, his big failure, the reason why he kept deviating away from the proper golden mean in the Aristotelian sense, is that he didn't explicitly identify and apply the primacy of existence to every philosophical issue. Now, this is, again, in objectivist philosophy, how do you have a definition? Well, you have a definition if you have a genus and a differentia, right? The genus identifies the general category, and the differentia, I can't remember the exact way that Peikoff puts it, right? But the genus is philosophy, right? It is a philosophy like everything else which is a philosophy. What differentiates it from all those other philosophies is that it has this explicit identification of the primacy of existence, and it explicitly applies that to every philosophical issue, right? Now, Ayn Rand failed in this task. She didn't do it properly. She made a mistake when it came to politics. And I fixed that mistake by properly identifying the problem statement, which is the problem statement of law, which is how I get the anarchism. So I just came in, fixed one of Ayn Rand's mistakes, and I'm doing the same method. I have the same method, the method of objectivity, from which objectivism gets its name, right? I'm doing that same method, so that's why it's still objectivist. That is still part of the objectivist canon. Now, if somebody came along to me, God came down. I recorded a video the other day with Mon Sharma of the Rational Frontier, I believe is a YouTube channel called. If God came down on a golden beam and he said, "Hear ye," actually the correct way to do aesthetics is to appeal to my Platonic ideals, and he got sucked back up into heaven. Now it might perhaps be proven that is the correct way to do things in aesthetics, which is a branch of philosophy, but that wouldn't be the objectivist method. So that is why I don't fall into the same problem which sort of the David Kelly school, the more primitive form of open objectivism, falls into, which, as far as I'm aware, classes objectivism means true philosophy, which is a frozen abstraction, of course. I don't fall into that same error, because I'm not saying it's true philosophy. I'm saying it's the
that's not true. They don't freeze the abstraction and say that only objectivism is philosophy.
True philosophy.
But here's the thing. So first of all, you mentioned genus and differentia. Genus and differentia applies to concepts, not proper nouns. Objectivism, the term, is a proper noun. It's a name that Ayn Rand used to designate her philosophy. It's a name. Therefore, you wouldn't have genus and differentia. And you don't have a genus and... Yeah, you can't hear me?
Yeah, you just cut out for a second.
Okay. You are in Scotland, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so you're pretty far away. And you look a lot like Sheamus, the wrestler, and that makes it difficult. But with a proper noun, you don't have genus and differentia in that way. And Ayn Rand, and this is, again, what differentiates her from Aristotle, from the previous ones, she specifically named her philosophy. So now Ayn Rand dies, her philosophy's set in stone, mistakes and everything. So now you say, well, you happen to be integrating the right thing, so we're going to call this objectivism. But the problem is you're not the only one trying to do this. And you have different people, and they could be right, they could be wrong. They're saying the same thing. And now you have somebody comes along and says, what is objectivism? And you no longer can say it's the philosophy of Ayn Rand. Now you have to say, well, it's the philosophy of Zulu, it's the philosophy of David Kelly, it's the philosophy of whoever the hell else comes along. And you no longer have the core that you can either promote or critique. The two biggest reasons I think this issue is important. One is for mental clarity. By limiting objectivism to the achievements of Ayn Rand, we have clarity. We know exactly what we're talking about when we say objectivism. And the other reason, it protects her achievement. We don't allow her achievement to get watered down, to get confused with other people and what their views are, what they happen to think. For instance, the Atlas Society. The Atlas Society is an open objectivist organization, some of which are out there and they're just constantly promoting Donald Trump, something Ayn Rand would never have done, ever. I'm totally convinced of that, right? And I don't mean they're just saying vote for him. I mean, some of them actually promote this guy, right? And they're doing it under the banner of the Atlas Society, and it becomes basically they're endorsing Trump. My point again is in order to maintain mental clarity of exactly what it is we're talking about when we use the term objectivism, we need to limit it to her achievement. And in order to pay the proper respect, we need to do the same thing. And again, it's not a concept. It's a proper noun. Objectivism is a name that she gave to her philosophical achievement.
Indeed, her philosophical achievement, namely being explicitly identifying and applying the primacy of existence to every philosophical issue. I completely agree. Now you're saying that you need this mental clarity. You need some proper core, which you could either critique or accept. Now, would you say it's impossible? And you specifically cited Marxism earlier. Is it impossible to critique Marxism because Marxism is now open?
It's impossible to know for sure what you're actually critiquing. If somebody tells you, I'm a Marxist, right? Let's say that's all you know. I come and I say, I'm a Marxist. You come out and say you're wrong because of fundamentally the labor theory of value. I say, oh, no. I don't accept the labor theory of value. I accept marginal utility, but I'm still a Marxist. Now you say, well, okay, but the concept of surplus value is just way wrong. It's just not true. No. I don't believe in surplus value. I think that there's profit and interest and that's appropriate. The point is that if once it's watered down, once it's not understood what you're talking about, it becomes very difficult to critique. It leads to mental chaos where you have an abundance of people who have different ideas of what a given thing is. That's true of Aristotelianism. Now, if you were to say neo-Aristotelianism, which some people do, I mean, there are neo-Aristotelians. I think Douglas Daniel and Douglas Rasmussen are neo-Aristotelians. I think Roderick Long might be a neo-Aristotelian, but although I'm not positive. Now you have a differentiator, so you know, okay, they are applying aspects of Aristotle's philosophy, but they differ. So if you say I'm Liquid Zulu, I'm a neo-objectivist, meaning I accept the core, but I have differentiations with her. I personally don't have an issue with that. But when you say I'm an objectivist and I'm an anarchist, you're obliterating 1/5 of Rand's philosophy in saying that it's still objectivism.
Yes, because this is the proper way to do things, right? You're talking about these neo-Aristotelians. Well, now suddenly that they're a neo-Aristotelian, well, now I know how to critique them. But it's like, okay, well, couldn't there be also multiple types of a neo-Aristotelian, right? There could be all sorts of that thing, right? But the thing is, if somebody comes to me and says they're a Marxist, I have had many debates. Again, I've had many debates with people. All I knew about them is that they are Marxist, and very immediately I was able to start. Because I just think about, what are the core tenets of Marxism? What is Marxism really getting at, right? Which is like the dialectical materialism, basically. That's like sort of the core thesis of Marxism.
Phrase right? Marx never used.
But whenever I encounter a Marxist,
it's a phrase Marx never used, Zulu. This is that you've just made my point.
I don't care if Marx ever used dialectical
materialism. But
materialism.
That's the point.
But that is the core thesis. Have you ever encountered a Marxist and been confused about where to take the debate? I have never. I always take dialectical materialism.
And how often, but Zulu, how often, Mark, I really, honestly, I don't like Marxists. I don't even like using them because they're so confused in their thinking. Even like everything you say, that's not what it means. This is not what it means. That's not what it means. But so we got this. I want to just use a thing from you. One of your disciples here, I hope you don't mind disciple. I don't know what else to call him. Free thinker. I don't know his real name this week. He said, I think this is social metaphysics. Really? In what regard is this social metaphysics? I would love for Free Thinker to explain that to me because I'm sure he can't. Because I know that there's nothing that I've said here that intimates making the mind of somebody else my reality, which is what social metaphysics is. It's instead of appealing to reality, you appeal to the mind of somebody else. I'm not doing that. I'm not saying that anything's true because Ayn Rand said it. I'm not saying anything's false because she didn't say it. I'm not saying there's not more to add to philosophy, to science, or anything else. What I'm saying is that when she died, her philosophy, the philosophy of Ayn Rand, is done. That's her philosophy. So now the guy says, just you're going to use this. He says, I care more about Rand's legacy than truth. Really? Then why have I critiqued her? Why have I differed with her? Why did I differ with Leonard Peikoff to his face? If that's the case.
Well, to be clear,
no, you didn't say it.
You're debating me, right?
No, I got it. No. You're not. I know I'm debating you. What I'm doing is using this as an example that when you say open objectivism, objectivism is open. You're looking at it as, oh, whatever's true can get added to objectivism.
No. I never said that. I said explicitly the opposite of that. I explicitly said not that. Right?
What are you saying can get added to objectivism? Go ahead.
Anything which is explicitly identifying and applying the primacy of existence. I explicitly said, no, I'm not saying that objectivism is true philosophy, because I do believe that is freezing the abstraction, right? Which Craig Biddle pointed out in his debate with what's his face? Stephen Hicks, yes. Yeah. Which I regard as that is the version of open objectivism which I am acquainted with, which I disagree with, right? Okay. The version I'm putting forward is that it is not true philosophy. It is the explicit identification and application of the primacy of existence. Now, we're having, but before we go into this tangent, the discussion we're having is, well, because you identified Marxism as one of these more open movements, and you said that these more open movements, you now don't know what the proper core is, so you can't critique it. But I'm just telling you, I've had many debates with Marxists.
No.
And I have been able to immediately, very quickly, I have been able to bring them down into the dialectical materialism, because I identified that as the core of Marxism, and I've been able to debate them on that. I've never had an issue where I run into a Marxist where they say, well, no, I'm a Marxist, but I also believe in free markets, but I'm a Marxist and I also believe in Aristotle, and I'm a Marxist. And I've never encountered that in my life.
No, I have run into them who have said that no, labor theory of value is not the core. No, dialectical materialism isn't a core. No, Marx wasn't a leftist. I have run into that. But the point is, again, if you're going back to Marx's original ideas, that's one thing. If you're saying anyone that builds on it is a Marxist, that's different. And people do that. I'm not saying that they don't. I'm just saying it leads to confusion. It leads to kids out there today thinking that they're Marxists who don't even know what Marx believed they're taught or anything else. Now, you said, you corrected me and you said that you're not saying that it's just what's true. You're saying that whatever is added to objectivism, that's a true application of the supremacy of existence, of the primacy of existence, would be part of objectivism.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. So you say this is the proper one. Somebody else says this is the proper application. Someone else says this is the proper application. Some may be right. Some may be wrong. Meanwhile, all these people are calling themselves objectivists. And now you have to differentiate from all of them when all you really need to do is say objectivism is the philosophy of Ayn Rand. Now you know what objectivism is. You haven't, again, that's not to say, that's not to say that everything Ayn Rand said was true, or that everything that needs to be said in philosophy was said by Ayn Rand. It just means where she was wrong, that's part of objectivism. It means any developments that stem or come from it but are from somebody else, that's not objectivism, although it could be applications. And by the way, this includes Leonard Peikoff. Leonard Peikoff was basically designated as her intellectual heir. He was with her for 30 years, friend, colleague, student. And he even says that his contributions to philosophy that are new are not part of objectivism.
Okay, so you said there that, like, to get rid of all this confusion that somebody new could perhaps have, right, all you have to do is just say, okay, well, objectivism is the philosophy of Ayn Rand. But does that get rid of the confusion? I don't think it does, because it's still you're going to have different people claiming that, well, objectivism is this.
It gets rid of the confusion about what objectivism clearly is. What I mean is somebody might say, somebody might say, for instance, give me a hypothetical. Well, objectivism supports, I don't know, prostitution. Let's just say that. Now I can say, well, here's Ayn Rand's philosophy. Show me where it says that. And you can do that with any claim that is made. You have Ayn Rand to point to. You say, Ayn Rand, this is her philosophy. Here it is. If it's an open philosophy after her death, then it's branching off in all different directions, and you end up not knowing what it is.
Right, but
Same thing, by the way.
my system does the same, right? If somebody came to me and they said, well, objectivism, that it said one of the conclusions of objectivism is that every third woman should be a prostitute, right? Just to take some random example. I would say, well, objectivism, that means the explicit application and identification of the primacy of existence to every philosophical issue. So I would say, well, how the fuck are you getting from this starting point to every third woman should be a prostitute? And they wouldn't be able to do it, obviously, because that's not true. So my system does the exact same thing, right? My definition of objectivism does the exact same thing of saying, well, show me in the holy texts where Ayn Rand said this, right? It does the exact same thing. So you haven't shown why this is the better way. Why holy texts, you haven't shown me how that's the better way of defining objectivism when we don't do that for any other philosophy.
Well, what about when someone says that objectivism consists of free markets under limited government? And then you're going to say, no, it doesn't, but anyone can point to Ayn Rand and see that that's exactly what you meant. Okay, the point isn't whether she's wrong or not. The point is that her philosophy, again...
No, I'd say they're wrong to say that that's part of the objectivism.
Yeah, but...
That's part of objectivism. I think Ayn Rand did a diversion from objectivism when she said that.
So the person who develops a philosophy, gives it a name, doesn't have the say over what it is, but subsequent thinkers do. Subsequent thinkers, by the way, who are going to disagree with each other. Now, when you and I debate, right? Let's say we have a follow-up to this and we debate, I don't know, anarcho-objectivism. Is it true objectivism, right? So now there's going to be, say, 500 people watching. Whatever. I don't know how many people watch these things. Some are going to say Zulu won. Some are going to say I won. So some of them are going to say, yes, Zulu's right. Anarchy is a part of objectivism. Some are going to say, no, it's not. But we still have the confusion because we don't just have the text to point to. We've opened the door by saying it's open. It's open to anybody's contributions as long as those contributions are logical applications. But human beings are fallible. So somebody may come in and do their damnedest to be logical, but not properly apply it. Somebody else might properly apply it. But again, that's new. That's not part of the objectivism that Ayn Rand developed. Would you say that your philosophy, for instance, is the philosophy of Ayn Rand?
No, it's not the philosophy of Ayn Rand. It's the philosophy of Liquid Zulu.
Okay.
But that is part of objectivism.
Okay. So, but objectivism is the philosophy of Ayn Rand. That's all closed objectivists are saying, is that objectivism, capital O, is a proper noun given the name to the philosophy developed by Ayn Rand. Who is anybody else to come along and say, no, she can't name her own philosophy?
Is physics a proper noun?
Physics a proper noun? No, it doesn't have a capital P.
Okay, well,
Einstein. What about Einstein's theory of relativity? Suppose
the theory of general relativity. Okay, theory of general relativity. Yeah. Would you count that as a proper noun?
I want to say yes. I'm not certain, but I would say yes. But Einstein's general theory of relativity is Einstein's general theory of relativity. But somebody can add and make observations that are consistent.
But Einstein was pointing at a general theory of relativity, right?
Well, he has two. He has general and specific.
Yeah, right.
But but you want to use general theory of relativity. Okay, fine.
Sure. So the general theory of relativity, do you think it would be impossible, like just by the fact of like some fact of epistemology, if anybody else made some discovery in the general theory of relativity, like maybe like he had some incorrect point somewhere in there and they just refined it, would that then be the generaler theory of relativity? But what it would be a partial refutation of the theory of relativity, and it would be a new theory. You might call it neo-relativity or modern relativity or some such other thing. I don't know what name you would call it, but it would no longer be the theory of relativity. Einstein didn't come out with a theory of relativity. He had the general theory of relativity, the specific theory of relativity. Those were Einstein's achievements. Doesn't mean he's correct. In the same way, Newton's third law of motion might be wrong, but but that doesn't change that was his law of motion. So it's specifically that you think because in the objectivist case that Ayn Rand identified it and gave it a name. that's why, right? It's different to, like, a more
That's no, I'm
general.
what no, I'm saying I'm saying that does differentiate it. But even in the case of Platonism or Aristotelianism or Marxism or anything else, I'm saying once you start including it under the rubric, under that name, once you start including new ideas and new people, you're distorting what it means, and it becomes more and more difficult to know just by saying Aristotelianism what exactly you're talking about. But it's also true that Ayn Rand, in order to obviate that problem, specifically named her philosophy, specifically said, my philosophy is going to be called Objectivism. This is it. Here it is. That's her philosophy. Again, she might be wrong. She might have not done everything. I don't think she did. And I think she was wrong about some things. But what I believe to be corrections are mine. They don't then become part of objectivism, even though I believe I've thoroughly demonstrated it. I've done it in debates with other objectivists. I've done it in casual conversation. I've done it in writing. It still doesn't become objectivism. It just becomes my clarification or my deviation from objectivism where I think it's wrong.
So I don't think I'm distorting. Again, we've gone through this before. I don't think I'm distorting what objectivism is. I think I'm refining it, right? And other people can come along and they can say objectivism is when you have infinity hookers, right? But they're clearly not doing any sort of process there to figure out, well, what is the correct essence here, right? I think I'm going in here and I'm saying, okay,
do you want
what is the
infinity
actual
hookers?
No, I mean, yeah, if I had infinity hookers, then there wouldn't be any scarcity, I suppose. So then, fuck it, why not, right? But if I'm going in here, and I'm, this is what we do when we do the history of philosophy, right? When we're studying the history of philosophy, we go, okay, well, what is the essence of this philosophy? We don't go, what is the enumeration right off each of their beliefs, and go, well, I guess that's what they all believed. Moving on now. That's a bad history of philosophy. A good history of philosophy is going, okay, well, what is the essence of this philosophy? What is the essence of Descartes? The essence of Descartes is the method of Cartesian doubt. It isn't the cogito ergo sum, because that was just thrown out because it was a deviation, right? Same with Kant, right? The essence of Kant isn't that you can indeed have this numeral world which you know about. The essence was destroying the mind, that you couldn't know reality anymore, because again, that was just thrown out by Hegel. Right?
You know what I find interesting?
Essence.
Zulu, first things first, you're identifying the fact that people use these things this way. Yes, you can identify the essence of a philosophy, but the essence isn't the entirety. In the same way as when you have a concept, the definition doesn't equal the concept. The definition identifies the fundamental of a concept, but the concept is much more. Same thing if you identify the essence of a philosophy. You've identified the fundamental, but the philosophy is much more. But even in the cases that you're naming, we have Neoplatonists, Neo-Aristotelians, Neo-Kantians, people who deviate from the starting point. And for you to say, no, you're not distorting, you're just refining, even if you were just refining, and even if you were absolutely correct, it still wouldn't be objectivism, because it still wouldn't be the philosophy that Ayn Rand named objectivism. But in fact, you're obliterating it. You're wiping out 1/5 of the philosophy of objectivism in claiming that the proper role is anarchy, an argument that Roy Childs made in the 60s or early 70s, and he was wrong. But then we have to debate, if we're going to accept that as the proper application, then we have to debate each issue. Oh, well, is this actually objectivism? Is anarchy objectivism? Or we could just say, no, objectivism doesn't include anarchy, but it may be wrong about it. Let's debate if objectivism's wrong about anarchy, if Ayn Rand is wrong about anarchy.
So I just want to read out one quote here. From Nathaniel Branden, back before their split, written in The Objectivist, with Ayn Rand's full knowledge and permission.
Sure.
Right? Full endorsement of everything he was writing at this time. He says, in the future, when objectivism has become an intellectual and cultural movement on a wider scale, when a variety of authors have written books dealing with some aspect of the objectivist philosophy, it could be appropriate for those in agreement to describe themselves as objectivists. However, at present, when the name is so intimately associated with Rand and me, it is not, at present, a person who's in agreement with our philosophy should describe himself not as an objectivist, but as a student or supporter of objectivism. Today, I regard that second sentence as inappropriate and stultifying. But note the implications of the first sentence, which I assure you had Rand's full knowledge and approval. Everything in our publication was edited by her. We were clearly projecting a future when objectivism would cover far more than the writings of Rand. If later Rand pulled back from that vision, it was for reasons more emotional than philosophical, and one can feel the compassion in her for her suffering. But still, she was right the first time and wrong the second. So I would regard this as definitely not painting that Ayn Rand definitely, for sure, always throughout time, held objectivism to mean that whatever beliefs Ayn Rand held. Because, this is from an article from Branden where he goes over other instances where his initial, lectures on objectivism, the idea wasn't at the time that it was just whatever Ayn Rand believed. So I don't accept this kind of
no. Well, hold on.
And moreover, what I want to point out with this is that it's like when you're talking to Christians, you get different sects of Christians, and they each point to different quotes from the different church fathers, right? And they say, "Hey, look, the church fathers agree with us, so that means our sect is right." And the other sect come in and says, "No, the church fathers agree with us. That means our sect is right." I think this is a bad way to do things.
No, because I'm not saying no. Because I'm not saying because Ayn Rand said something, it's right. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that right or wrong, Ayn Rand's philosophical writings are what is the corpus of objectivism. And if you listen, first of all, Nathaniel Branden's comments later on, the guy's a known liar. That's the first thing. I mean, let me throw that out there. And I'm somebody who's been deeply influenced by his writings. I think a lot of his writings are great. His character, not so much. As is evident, you don't even have to go further than reading Barbara Branden's account of the relationship. But even his thing, when Rand is saying there might be further writings on it, sure, you can write about it. You can write about objectivism. That's fine. But you can't change it. You can't add to it. Your innovations don't become part of it. Even if she did think that then, after that, she changed her mind on it. But I would even say that even that, I don't really care. She named it objectivism. That's what it is. It's her philosophy. She named it so. Peikoff in, I want to say 91, in fact, in value, closed system. That's it. It's closed. So her nearest student, the one who she didn't identify as a liar, didn't have a break with, said it was closed. Even her own statement doesn't necessarily mean it's ever going to be open. All it really means is that, look, in the future, there may be objectivists, but right now there aren't. Because I'm not going to trust anybody to call themselves an objectivist, which is one of the reasons, by the way, I was very hesitant to even call myself an objectivist. What was because of that. But the ultimate point, again, boils down to objectivism is a proper noun that specifically identified a philosophy that was discovered and developed by a certain person and was ultimately codified in the lectures of Leonard Peikoff, the lectures that were called Objectivism, the Philosophy of Ayn Rand. And within that philosophy, 1/5, politics is 1/5 of her philosophy. She abhorred anarchists, hated them, couldn't stand them. So to say, well, no, objectivism can be part of anarchist is to obliterate her achievement.
So you're saying it's a proper noun, which identifies a philosophy, but
Yeah.
which philosophy? Because again,
Hers.
I can identify a philosophy, Aristotelianism. Which philosophy
Sure.
does that identify?
If you were doing it properly, I would say if you're going to say Aristotelianism, it ought to have referred to the philosophy of Aristotle. Unfortunately, that's not how it's been done. But just because it's been done a certain way doesn't mean it's the correct way for it to be done. I concede wholeheartedly that Aristotelianism, Platonism, Marxism, Keynesianism, 1,000 other isms out there, they don't identify the name, the philosophy specifically of the name of the person who developed the philosophy. The question is that right? Is it appropriate for it to be that way? But you still haven't answered the question that why not just say neo-objectivist when we have Neoplatonists? You had Neoplatonists, I believe, as Plotinus wrote when? In the 1000s or something. Neoplatonist. You had Neoplatonists 1,000 years ago. Why can't you just be a neo-objectivist? Why do you have to call yourself an objectivist when, again, the philosophy of objectivism was discovered, developed, elucidated by Ayn Rand, named objectivism, capital O, proper noun to name it. So how do you get anything else that becomes a part of that, a part of her achievement? Just make it your own achievement.
Well, maybe I'm just less cowardly than the Neoplatonists, and I'm willing to just kind of sit on a term, right? Maybe that's why. Right?
Well, why does it have to be
Hold on.
cowardly? If they thought they were right, then why does it have to be cowardly? Cowardly would mean they knew they were wrong.
First, you said that, well, it's incorrect. It might. Pardon me.
You okay?
You said yeah. Pardon me. You said that it was perhaps bad that this happened to Aristotelian. That Aristotelian got distilled down into its diamond form, you might say. That it got refined into its essentials. But why is that bad? Why is it bad to do that when we're being historians of philosophy? Why is that the incorrect way? Why is it correct way to just list off a bunch of things like that?
I say that to call. I say something. I say because you have a specific person developed a specific philosophy. In that case, Aristotle. Aristotelian ought to refer to Aristotle's philosophy. The reason it ought to refer, because then when someone says Aristotelian, you know what they're talking about. Now you don't. Same thing with Platonists. When someone says they're a Platonist, you don't know what they're talking about. Even if you could identify the core, which I'm not entirely confident you could, there's still aspects missing because, as I said before, there's more to a philosophy than just the fundamentals, as there more to a concept than just the fundamentals. You okay?
Yeah. So you said that the problem with identifying Aristotelian in the way that it's been done is that, well, when someone says Aristotelian, you don't know what you're talking about. And, we could have replaced Aristotelian with Marxist, with Keynesian, with all those things, right? But when someone comes to me and says they're an Aristotelian, I have no confusion about what they're talking about. I know for sure they're not talking about how they think there's a bunch of spheres rotating up in space. When someone says they're a Marxist, I have no confusion what they're talking about. When someone comes to me with these open systems, I have no confusion about it.
Okay,
right?
you say you have no confusion. Here's the problem. You're making a truth claim that you have no confusion. I have no way to verify that you have no confusion. I have no way to verify that you absolutely identify the philosophy of every person called an Aristotelian or every person called a Marxist. I don't know that. And that leads to part of the problem, that I don't know everybody that's trying to add to objectivism, nor do you. That nobody does. Nobody knows that they're going to be completely consistent. I don't think you're completely consistent. I know you call yourself the most consistent MFer out there. And that's cool. I like your confidence. I think you're wrong. But the point is, right or wrong, it's not objectivism's philosophy. Like, just this guy, I want to go back to where is he? And I understand this isn't you, but this is somebody that learns from you, and this entails part of the problem. He said, so correcting any error becomes anti-objectivist. No, I didn't. Nobody said that. Nobody implied it. All we're saying is that your correction is not objectivism. It's opposed to one aspect of objectivism, sure. That doesn't make it anti-objectivist. We're not rationalists who say, well, here's a strict contradiction right here, therefore it's entirely different, because the reality is it's not entirely different.
Right. So I'm just trying to hammer in on this.
Okay.
Because indeed I am making a truth claim here that I am able to identify the core fundamentals, the essence of various philosophies. I think there's a logical method you can apply to identify the essence of any philosophy.
That's not what you said. That wasn't what you said, Zulu.
And to be clear, I believe that Leonard Peikoff did the exact same thing when he did a history of philosophy. I think that is the proper role of a historian of philosophy.
That's not what you said, though. That wasn't what you said. You didn't say you could identify the core of any philosophy. What you said was you could identify the philosophy of anybody calling themselves a Marxist or anybody calling themselves an Aristotelian. That's what I have issue with. Whether you could identify the core, maybe you could, maybe you couldn't, I don't know. I am far more skeptical that anyone who comes along and says they're an Aristotelian, you could identify their philosophy.
Okay, hold on then. But if I could identify the core of some philosophy, and then, you know, if I identified the core of some philosophy, say Marxism, and then a Marxist came to me and adopted some completely anti-Marxian position, I could say, well, actually, buddy, I know more about Marxism than you do because I identified the core. Here's my entire process which I used to identify the core, and you disagree with that core, so you're not operating on your own premises. This happens all the time. People will adopt contradictions.
So what I want to do, we're going to do in a second, but I would still say you just telling him nobody, this is the core, doesn't, because he's going to say, well, I disagree with the implications. I want you, let's do a real live exercise. I want you, if you can't do it, because I told you we had to go at 5:30, so I don't want to put you too much on the spot because it's my time limitation. So if you can't do it, it's understandable. But if you think you can, in 15 minutes or 10 minutes, demonstrate how your philosophy is the unmistakable application of the fundamentals of Rand's philosophy and how this is not going to lead to confusion, I'd like to see it in real time.
Well, it's not the sure, but to be clear, it's not the applications. You try it, maybe not deliberately, but it's not Rand's philosophy, right? It's the philosophy of the primacy of existence. I just wanted to make that clear.
Well, whose philosophy was that?
Ayn Rand identified the core of it, but she failed in certain aspects. So I don't want it to end up getting up into the politics and me asserting the legal point. And then you're like, well, that wasn't Rand's philosophy.
No, okay.
I'm just trying to avoid that.
Start with the primacy of existence, and you show me where she went wrong, how yours is the necessary correction, how it's unmistakably so, and how that should be a part of objectivism. That's what I would like to see in real time. Let's put some what's the word I'm looking for? Meat on this bone.
Sure. Let me just bring up my my video on the topic. I've got the script here. It was anarcho-capitalism responding to the critics. I just need to get up because it's a specific quote I need. It was here, right? So in primacy of existence, right? We all know first chapter of Opar, probably at least. Peikoff lifts off all of the. He brings out, I should say, all of these different axioms, namely the existence axiom that existence exists. Then you get consciousness, right? That you are conscious of existence, and he throws identity in there, of course.
And where's this from?
Specifically, it's from Opar, right?
Okay.
Specifically, the important thing about objectivism, as against every other philosophy, because other philosophies, they can say existence exists and that man is conscious of it. A Christian could say that, right? But a Christian, they would not say that existence comes first, right? That is the objectivist innovation, that existence exists first and then you're conscious of it. They explicitly identify this and apply it across the board, right? This is the primacy of existence. That's what makes us different to everywhere else. Now, when you build up into the politics, right? I don't consider that a valid branch of philosophy. Why don't I consider that a valid branch of philosophy? Well, let's look at Peikoff's statement from Opar of what the question that politics is trying to answer. He says it is trying to answer what is wrong or what is right or wrong in terms of what the government does, what society does, unquote, or that, quote, politics, like ethics, is a normative branch of philosophy. Politics defines the principles of a proper social system, including the proper functions of government. Now, I regard that as a completely invalid problem statement. I don't think that's valid in the first case, right? Because what is it saying? It's saying the principles of a proper social system. What is right or wrong in terms of what the government does, what society does? Well, I don't think as society, I don't think it can do right or wrong. I don't think it can do in the first place, right? I don't think there are principles. Principles are principles of action. Societies don't have actions. They are abstractions. Individuals have actions. So what is the correct problem statement? Why do we need, what is politics trying to point at? It's trying to point at law, right? What is the problem statement of law as I have stated it? It is, well, there's this thing called scarcity, right? I can't use a stick to spearfish at the same time that you use that stick to stoke your fire. One action excludes the other. We call this a conflict. If we both try and use the stick at the same time, that's a conflict. Mutually exclusive actions. So ethics can properly answer this question. What should you, the individual, do with respect to conflicts? And it has an answer to this that I discovered, that I worked out, namely the non-aggression principle. Obviously, other people, I'm not saying that I came up with the non-aggression principle. Other people had it before me, including Rand, including Rothbard, but I worked out this specific proof, right? This specific formulation of it. That there are three possible answers you can have to this question of law. That is the law of the jungle, just do whatever the hell you want, just win worship, who cares? Some sort of mixed law. Sometimes you should aggress, sometimes you shouldn't. Aggression being the initiation of conflict. Or the non-aggression principle, don't aggress, right? And I've worked out in full in the video that, in fact, it is the case that both the law of the jungle and mixed law resolve, if you break them down unto their nth degree, they end up in the primacy of consciousness. So, and primacy of consciousness is false. We know this from objectivism. So, non-aggression principle, only option left, right? So the non-aggression principle is the true rational principle of law. You're not rational with respect to scarcity unless you're operating upon the primacy, upon the non-aggression principle. Otherwise, you are evading, right? That is why this is properly fits in to the objectivist canon. Anything else is completely irrational. It's a complete diversion right from the core of objectivism. It is whim worship. It is evasion. It's terrible. That's why it's so easy, again, for me to just throw away this nonsense politics because it has an incorrect problem statement.
Okay, so you started off by saying, I want to make sure that I'm following you. You were going to demonstrate where Rand deviates from the primacy of existence, that she doesn't practice it consistently, right? You then told me that politics is not a proper branch of philosophy. You then went on to elucidate a philosophy of politics and to say that Rand was wrong.
No, I don't call it politics. To be clear, I'm saying this is the problem statement of law. I accept that from Peikoff that this is the problem statement that politics is trying to answer. I accept that wholeheartedly.
Okay.
Fine, that's what politics is, because that's what every other philosopher thought that politics was. I'm fine with that, but I'm saying that's not a proper branch of philosophy.
All right. Okay, so then you disagree. I'm going to address your specific proof that you just gave in a second, but you're saying that you can reject an entire category of a philosophy, and you're not changing that philosophy. You're being consistent, and you're still going to be a part of that philosophy.
Because again, I don't think when Rand was doing politics, I don't think she was doing philosophy. Because I don't think this is a legitimate branch of philosophy. It's not a branch of philosophy, so she wasn't doing philosophy.
Yeah. Okay. Of course, politics is a proper application of philosophy. But the point is, again, objectivism is the philosophy developed and discovered by Ayn Rand. If she's wrong about an entire branch of philosophy, if you think she's wrong about an entire branch, not just her conclusions within the branch, that the branch should even be there, you're obliterating objectivism at that point. You're not saving it. You're destroying it. Now, you might say that it's wrong. Fine. Make the argument that it's wrong. But then this new thing that you're coming out with is not objectivism.
Let me ask you a question. Do you agree with Ayn Rand's view that man is metaphysically dominant, so therefore he should be the dominant one in sexual relationships?
Do I agree with that? Okay.
Just in the first case, do you agree with it?
No. I not only don't agree with it, but it's also not part of her philosophy.
Exactly. Right. But that's my point.
No, but we know what's a part of her philosophy.
Hold on. That because you don't consider that as one of the branches of philosophy. You don't consider sexual roles as a branch of philosophy, right? That's why it's not part of it.
Hold on. I think discussions of sex are appropriate to philosophy. I think that specific claim that she made is not part of her philosophy. The reason I say it's not part of her philosophy, because objectivism, the philosophy of Ayn Rand, originally given by lectures by Leonard Peikoff in the 70s under the auspices of Rand, and then codified in a book that is the philosophy of Ayn Rand, doesn't include it. It's not included in The Virtue of Selfishness. It's not included in Philosophy Who Needs It. I believe it's in some compilation of essays that somebody put together, or even a matter of fact, if my memory serves me correct, it might be in more than one place, but it was a question that was asked to her at the Ford Hall Forum. The bottom line is it's not included as part of her philosophy in her philosophical writings, any more than the article that she wrote about a woman president. But I mean, there's things within her philosophy that I disagree with as well. But my disagreements don't then become objectivism.
Right, but this seems so. Is your view that Ayn Rand could have endorsed some philosophical viewpoint, which then didn't make it into the final cut of OPAR, and that philosophical viewpoint, which Ayn Rand endorsed, is not part of the philosophy of Ayn Rand?
It's not part of objectivism. It's part of, it could be part maybe of her personal belief system, but they literally put philosophy? Out, yeah, her personal philosophy, but not the philosophy that Ayn Rand put out.
So there is such a thing as Ayn Rand's personal philosophy, and that is distinct.
There could be. Listen, I'm not saying it is. I'm saying it could be. I'm saying that Ayn Rand could have beliefs that are outside of her developed philosophy of objectivism. Of course she could. Of course you could.
Philosophical beliefs?
If they aren't developed and argued for as part of her philosophy that's being put forward,
well, she did argue for them. She made,
hold on. She actually, what she said in response to the question, when somebody asked her about this, what she actually said was, if I have to explain it, then you're not going to understand it.
Right. But I mean,
okay,
the argument,
even if
the argument is implicit, at least.
Okay.
In her books, right?
In her what?
In her books. I
thought you said in her boobs. I don't know what's implicit. I don't know what's implicit in her boobs. I certainly think that you can make the argument, for that case, not for the woman president, but an argument could be made that that is one of her philosophical conclusions. But I would still go further. An argument could be made for that, and that philosophical conclusion is part of objectivism. I'm not denying that, but that's not an entire branch of philosophy.
It wasn't in OPAR. But it wasn't in OPAR.
No, it wasn't.
You said previously, because it wasn't in OPAR.
That's not what I said. No, it's not what I said, sir.
Okay,
it's not what I said.
What is your viewpoint?
What I said was, no, I said is, look at you. We have her philosophical writings, Virtue of Selfishness, Philosophy Who Needs It, For the New Intellectual. Then we have OPAR. We have Introduction to Objectivist Epistemology. We have Return of the Primitive, right? We have her Philosophy Who Needs It. We have her philosophical writings that are a development of her philosophy. Then we have statements that she made, off-the-cuff statements here and there that aren't, or an essay that she might have written that aren't part of those philosophical texts that she put together. The specific one that you're talking about in regard to sex, what I'm saying is it could be argued that it's implicit somewhere else in her philosophical writings. It might even be in there and I'm just not remembering it. So I'm saying, yes, that specific point might be a part of her philosophy. By the way, incidental part that's not of much importance. What you're talking about is obliterating an entire branch of philosophy.
Specifically, what I'm trying to get at is that I don't think the proper roles in sex, I don't think that's actually a part of philosophy, right? I don't think that's in philosophy. Now, it's certainly an area of study which you could apply philosophy to, right? But I don't think it's a part of philosophy, right? That is the point I'm saying, is that I don't think politics is
sexual ethics is not a part of philosophy.
You could apply ethics to perhaps this.
Well, then it's a part of. I mean, I don't know.
Maybe it's part of philosophy, but I mean, it seems a little bit odd to count it part of philosophy. It's certainly not a branch of philosophy.
No, it's not. No, it's not a branch of philosophy.
So at the very, just what I'm saying.
Sexual ethics would be a sub branch of a branch at best.
Sure.
But it's still part of philosophy.
Okay. But what I'm saying is that I don't think that politics is part of philosophy. I think it's a fiction, dreamt up. That's what I'm saying. I don't think politics is a branch of philosophy. So if I am disagreeing with Ayn Rand on this non-branch of philosophy, like if Ayn Rand, there are accusations, I don't know if these are true, again, I really don't know if these are true, but I've heard places that Ayn Rand didn't think that the theory of evolution was correct for some reason. Now, if I disagreed with Ayn Rand on the theory of evolution, then I wouldn't be rejecting the objectivist viewpoint, because that's clearly not a part of philosophy, right?
Well, that's not, because she specifically said in Philosophy Who Needs It, in the essay entitled Missing Link, what she said was, I don't know enough about evolution. I'm therefore neither its friend nor its enemy. But if you were to, if Ayn Rand, for instance, held that the theory of evolution is part of philosophy, and you said, no, it's not, then she would be wrong about that. But nevertheless, that would be part of her philosophy that she developed. It would just be wrong.
How could it?
She
how
can
could it,
be
hold on,
wrong.
How could it be part of her philosophy if it is not part of philosophy?
Because her philosophy would include the view that this is part of philosophy. That would be part of her philosophy. And then you could argue that's inappropriate. You can argue that politics shouldn't be a part of philosophy. That's fine. What I'm saying is she held it to be a part of philosophy. That's a part of her view, a part of objectivism. If you reject 1/5 of what her philosophy entailed of, if I, for instance, came out and said art should not be a part of philosophy, then that's not objectivism, what I'm talking about. It could be true. I don't think it is. I also think that politics has been considered a branch of philosophy for thousands of years. It's been considered a part, not just in the West, in China, for God's sake. So, I mean, it's always been considered a part of it. But she included it as part of hers. If you then come and say, no, it's not part of her philosophy, she's wrong, then you're not talking about objectivism. You're critiquing it, which is fine. Critique away.
So I just want to know, because you're saying that objectivism is the
How much I bench
philosophy of-
press?
Yeah. So you're saying that objectivism is the philosophy of Ayn Rand, meaning, what does that mean? Other than the philosophical positions that Ayn Rand held. Is that what it means?
What I mean when I say objectivism is the philosophy of Ayn Rand, I mean the positions, viewpoints, ideas that she considered part of objectivism, and as such put them in her works on philosophy. Again, I would count the lectures given by Peikoff in '76 because he gave them under her auspices. The Objectivism, the philosophy of Ayn Rand. I would include Introduction to Objectivist Epistemology, Virtue of Selfishness, Philosophy Who Needs It, Return to the Primitive. Those are the works, and I might be missing something that I'm just not remembering. I don't think I am. But the philosophical works that she put forward as part of objectivism, I would consider part of objectivism. I wouldn't consider some article she wrote offhand. I wouldn't consider some comment she made to some guy at the Ford Hall Forum, unless she specifically said this is, if she said objectivism is this, then I would say sure. But in the case of, for instance, the female president, that was an article she wrote. That wasn't, it never seemed to be to me to be intended to be a part of objectivism. But let's just say, even if it were, that would mean that part of objectivism were wrong. It wouldn't mean that I'm right to exclude it from objectivism.
Just to be clear there, I believe you said this in your second iteration of this. I want to be clear if you really did say this, because I wasn't necessarily hearing you correctly. That you're saying it's the philosophical positions, viewpoints, ideas that she considered part of objectivism.
That she specifically, the philosophical views and writings that she considered to be part of objectivism. Yeah.
Okay, so if there was some non-philosophical view that she considered part of objectivism, then that would not be part of objectivism.
Does she consider it part of objectivism? If she considered it part of objectivism, if she said this is part of objectivism, I would say, yes, it's part of objectivism, and that's why objectivism is wrong, or that's why objectivism is flawed. So if she included something in her philosophy that shouldn't be part of philosophy, then her philosophical views are wrong. She's wrong about what should be in philosophy, and then therefore objectivism would be, at least to that extent, mistaken.
So let's just take a clearly not philosophical viewpoint. Let's say that she thought that her neighbor's dog liked cheese. Let's imagine that, right? And she thought that this position.
I just
that
want
her
to tell you,
neighbor-
hold on 1 second. We have about 20 minutes left. I just want to make sure that you're aware of the time
Okay.
constraints. But go ahead and make your point.
And she believes that this position, that her neighbor's dog likes cheese, she
Yes.
believes that is part of philosophy, that is part of objectivism.
Yes.
Now, this is not a philosophical position, but she
No.
does believe it's part of objectivism. But you said it is the philosophical positions that she considered part of objectivism. So this is not a philosophical position.
No, but
that she
then
considered part
you
of
hold on.
objectivism.
That's true. I did say that, but then you asked me to clarify, and I did so. If she claimed it's part of objectivism, it's part of objectivism. If she included that, what you just said, as part of objectivism, then she's a nut, and objectivism is no good.
Okay.
At least to a large extent. And if she's arguing that that's a corollary or a concomitant of some previous view, she would be vastly mistaken. But it would be objectivism. It would just be wrong.
Okay, so that is different from what you said previously. Can we at least acknowledge that?
I did. I already told you. I clarified for you. No, it's not just the philosophical positions. Anything that I said, what I meant by that is anything that's included in her philosophical works. Now, if she said separately from that somewhere, oh, this is now going to be part of my philosophy, this view that my next door neighbor's dog, whatever the hell you said, eats kittens. I don't know. But no, they're not eating the pets. But even if that were the case, I would say, yeah, and she's nuts and that philosophy's wrong.
So I just want to kind of in these last 20 minutes, I suppose, kind of go over well, why
Hope you're not going to make a pass at me, dude.
Why is this the correct way to identify flaws? Do we do this for anybody else? I mean, we've already gone over. We don't really do this for anybody else, and still we're able to debate those ideas. We're able to identify those ideas. We're able to. Why is objectivism specifically different from all these other ideas?
Okay. First of all, the way that people have done it means nothing to me. That doesn't make it correct because they've done it that way.
Peikoff hasn't done it this way, to be clear.
Peikoff hasn't done what?
In his history of philosophy, he does not go, well, Platonism meets the beliefs of Plato and blah, 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 blah.
Okay, I haven't read it, so I'm not going to comment on Peikoff's specific history of philosophy, although this is like the third time in a week that somebody's mentioned to me about this book. It wasn't available to me.
We should watch the lecture series on YouTube. It's very good.
Yeah. I just have a lot to do. I do plan on it eventually. But even if, let's say, somebody does it today, I'm not even saying you would be wrong to do that with those things today, because you'd have to in order for people to know what you were talking about, because they've been doing it all along. Doesn't mean that that's how they should have been doing it. It just means that that's the hand that you're dealt. That's what you're dealt with. But if we're going to go back to the beginning, if Aristotle was alive, or if Aristotle had just passed and somebody wanted to pass off a new philosophy or new things as Aristotle's philosophy, I would say, no, that's wrong. You shouldn't do that. But in fact, that is what happens. It doesn't just happen with philosophical movement. It happens with concept creep all over the place, where people start including new things under a given concept, so that words, the definition of words in dictionaries changes, the meaning that people apply to words change. That's what people do. I mean, I don't think they have to do it, but it's the way that they do it. Doesn't mean it's the right way to do it. The reason I'm saying this is the right way to do it here is because it protects the clarity of her philosophy and pays proper respect to her achievement. That's why I think that it's appropriate to do here. And, as part of that, she happened to name it specifically, called it objectivism, proper noun, capital O, whereas the other philosophers did not do that. So those are two differences. One, the modernity of it, that we still have the opportunity to do that before it gets destroyed. And two, she specifically named her philosophy.
Okay, so I want to tackle these point by point. So the first point was the clarity.
Okay, I'm just telling you, I have to go. I'm just telling you, I 20 minutes. If you can get it in, get it. I'm just saying I've got to be done by 5:25 so I can wrap up. But
sure. So on the first point, it was the clarity of her philosophy. Now, I maintain that my definition of objectivism is perfectly clear. If somebody's philosophically inclined enough, they can work this out the exact same way I worked it out. So I think it's still perfectly clear. Now,
I disagree.
we can go into that maybe a bit on the paying proper respect to her achievement point.
Yeah.
I don't think this is how we should define words. I don't care about paying proper respect to people.
It's not a well.
Sure, it
well,
matters, but that
sure,
doesn't matter in terms of
no,
definitions.
but it's not. That's another one of the keys. It's not a definition. Proper nouns don't have definitions. It's a
So you
proper
can
noun
tell
we're
me
talking
what
about.
objectivism is. It doesn't have a
I can
definition.
tell you. I would tell you that objectivism is the philosophy of Ayn Rand. If you then
Is
ask
that a
me to
definition?
elaborate, no, it's just telling you what it is. It's not defining the noun. It's just telling you what it is. It's a philosophy of Ayn Rand. Then if you ask me to elucidate it, I could do it. I could, go through the various points that she makes. But no, you don't define proper nouns. But that could be a debate that we have in the future. Whether we could, aside from whether objectivism is open or closed, we could debate whether Liquid Zulu's, what would be the word I'm looking for here? Development. Would development be okay with you? Are Liquid Zulu's developments and claimed corrections consistent with objectivism or the logical entailment of objectivism? We could do that separately. I'm perfectly willing to do it. I just have to meet somebody at 6 o'clock for coffee. So I can't.
Sure.
I can't do it now.
So we can maybe then go into the clarity point real quick then.
Okay.
So you were, but obviously you got to go very soon. So just on this point, you were saying that you disagree with my point that I think I maintain the exact same clarity that you do. Why don't you think that I maintain the same clarity?
I disagree with that because you think it's clear, and you use this evidence that you could identify the philosophies of anybody calling themselves an Aristotelian, a Marxist, whatever. I would disagree that you could do that. I don't see the proof of that. I'm not calling you a liar. I think that you do believe that. I would disagree. I don't think that that's possible to do. So I would remove that as evidence. The next step is this. You're saying it maintains clarity because you're saying that you're correct. Plenty of people think you're wrong. Many other people will come along and think they're correct. People will think they're wrong. If you add all that on to objectivism, which is what necessarily happens if you're talking about open objectivism, it becomes a mongrel philosophy that you can't clearly know, which, like I've said, has happened with the other philosophies as well, where you don't know specifically what a Marxist is. What does a Marxist believe? What are the entailments of his philosophy? You don't know. Same thing with an abundance of other things. We don't want the same thing to happen with objectivism.
Well, so I really just disagree with this point. Like,
I know that's why we're debating.
Hold on. So this idea that somebody could come to you and say, well, I'm a Marxist, but I believe in free markets. I believe in that man should be selfish. I believe, they just start listing off objectivist tenets, and they say, but I'm a Marxist. And you wouldn't say, what the fuck are you talking about?
No,
like,
here's the
you
thing.
would say that.
Yeah, those, when you, and Craig Biddle actually did this in his debate. He used extreme examples like that. And I get it. You use extreme examples to illustrate a point. But let's take libertarianism, for instance. I recently said that libertarianism has lost meaning, and someone used the point, well, it doesn't mean Marxism. Sure, I know that. But does it mean anarcho-capitalism? Does it mean support for intellectual property or opposition to intellectual property? Is it open borders? Is it closed borders? And is it pro-abortion, anti-abortion? The term libertarianism has, for all intents and purposes, lost clarity. Now I get you would come in and say, no, this is what libertarianism is. Then someone else comes in and says, no, this is what libertarianism is. I got to tell you, I studied libertarianism for 20 years in prison, and what I've gotten out here to see what passes for libertarianism is not what I've been reading about. So there's vast differences in what people say it. And that's my point. I don't want that happening to objectivism.
And oftentimes people come in, we call them pseudoscientists, right? They come in and claim to be doing science. They're saying, I'm a scientist and I'm doing this like perpetual motion machine or whatever. Yeah. And everybody's able to identify, like everybody reasonable is able to go, well, no, you're not actually doing science at all.
Sure.
Right.
Is everybody able to identify libertarianism?
I don't care if, again.
But then why'd you say everybody?
Hold on. To be clear, I don't care if people can identify this or not. Proper reasoning. If you're applying proper reasoning, you can identify that these people are not doing science and these people are not doing libertarianism, and these people are not doing objectivism, right? That is the correct standard there. That you can, again, many people can claim all sorts of things. People could claim,
Of
well, the philosophy
course.
of Ayn Rand actually it endorsed, stoning homosexuals to death. That's what the philosophy of Ayn Rand endorsed, and you could go like, well, no, it doesn't fucking do that. And
No, it
you can
doesn't.
disprove
You
them.
can especially do that if you go to her actual works and not
Why
let
especially?
everybody, because now you have a clearly delimited philosophy.
So do I.
No, you don't. Well, hold on. I shouldn't say
Philosophy
that.
of the
I'm not,
primacy
no,
of
no,
existence.
no, hold on. I'm not saying you don't. I'm saying if we allow open objectivism, then we don't. That's what I'm saying.
It depends on what you mean by
Zuluism.
open objectivism.
Hold on. I think. Well, there you go. It depends what you mean. I think Zuluism is crystal clear. Zuluism is crystal clear.
But then
clear boundaries.
People can be wrong about what open objectivism is. People can be wrong about what objectivism is, but that doesn't prove that I'm wrong about what objectivism is. I'm correct about what objectivism is. And my definition is still crystal clear.
Hold on. Zulu, what proves you wrong is the fact that you are obliterating 1/5 of Ayn Rand's philosophy.
I don't think it's part of philosophy, though.
I know, but that's what we had the debate for. All right, give a what's the word I'm looking for, Zulu? I definitely, hey, when you're down for it, can we debate the other subject about whether your views actually, it doesn't have to be tomorrow, obviously. I'm just saying whether that they logically entail objectivism, some such thing. We'll come up with it. We'll hash it out. We'll hash it out. I just want to say, Zulu, I love debating you. You never devolve into insults. You always, maintain consistency. You're committed to reason, although I think you're wrong. And you're only 24 years old, and I think your future's very, very bright. I think that this is what debate is supposed to be about. There's no insults flying. It's just two people. I respect you. I certainly think you respect me. And it's just, we're disagreeing and doing it the way it's supposed to do. So, if you want to, you can tell people where to find you, all that. You can give a closing statement about why I'm an idiot, whatever you want.
For sure. Michael's a big dumb idiot because for me. Thank you very much for having me on. I very much appreciate it. I think it was a great debate there. You can find me on my website is liquidzulu.github.io. You can find my course on libertarian ethics there. You can read it for free or pay whatever you want for the video version, or you can find me on YouTube, Liquid Zulu. But it was very good. And you can shout yourself out to my chat if you want as well.
He's also on X posting all the time. The guy's got an abundance of content. And by the way, just as an aesthetic point, he puts out good content. It's quality. He's a young content creator. Check him out. You may disagree with him. You may yell at the screen, but so what? We shouldn't be afraid of views that we disagree with. If we are, then we can never challenge him and we can never get to the truth. Zulu, thank you so much for being here on a Friday, whatever the hell it is for you. It's 5:20 for me. Thank the audience, everyone in the audience, for joining, whether you were a follower of Zulu's or someone who followed me or someone who just happened to see it come along on X. I really appreciate it. I will be back on Monday. Hopefully Mark Pellegrino will be with me for the Capitalist Corner. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. And when you share from YouTube to your favorite social media platforms, something about an algorithm or something else. Thanks, everybody. Zulu, thank you especially. Take care, everyone.
Sure. I will just say before I quit my stream,